He lost his memory and fell in love with another woman. I mourned him, buried our love, and disappeared. 6 years later I returned, not to reclaim him, but to bury the past for good. He begged for a second chance. But I wasn't the woman who got left behind. I was the woman who walked away. They said we were meant for each other. Nathan Hale and I had been tied together by fate, legacy, and a century-old promise between the Hales and the Evans family. Our marriage was the product of careful tradition, not whirlwind romance. But somehow I had grown to love him anyway. I convinced myself that love could grow in quiet places. In shared coffee. In dinner conversations. In the way he pulled the blanket up over my shoulders when he thought I was asleep. But love, I learned far too late, cannot be one-sided. We had only been married 3 years when the accident happened. It was raining, cold, heavy rain that blurred the road and erased the lines. I was driving, terrified, stuck on the steep ridge near Hollow Cliff. Nathan was in the car behind me, shouting something through the crackling Bluetooth when the brakes failed. I remember headlights, screeching tires, a flash of blue, and then his car in front of mine. He swerved into the path of the truck. I screamed his name as metal crumpled like paper. He died on impact. The man who had once fallen off a cliff and disappeared for 3 years came back only to save me with his life. Yes, he had vanished years ago. Everyone thought he was dead. But Nathan had survived that fall, washed up in a remote fishing village with no memory of who he was. According to the doctor's notes we later found, he remembered nothing. Not his name, not his family, not me. Until someone recognized him months later and brought him back. But even then he never spoke of those missing years. He'd claimed they were a fog, a blur. His parents never pressed him. I never dared. Not until he died again. At the funeral I wore black. Simple, understated, the way he liked. The air smelled like damp soil and lilies. Dozens came to say goodbye. But I didn't hear them. My ears rang with silence. My body felt like it wasn't mine. Nathan's casket was white. Immaculate. His photograph sat on a silver easel beside it. One of him smiling faintly, his dark hair swept by the wind, his eyes unreadable. Mrs. Hale sobbed openly. Her mascara ran down her cheeks like ink stains. "It's my fault," she whispered to no one. "If I hadn't forced him to marry Clara. If I had let him be with her, he might still be." Mr. Hale's voice cut through like a blade. "He died for her. He fell off a cliff for her. Took a truck for her. And she's still standing." He turned to me. His eyes were ice. "Why wasn't it you?" The words struck deeper than any blow. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My grief had calcified into something harder. It wasn't until later, when I stood alone at his tombstone, that the pain surfaced. Nathan Hale. Beloved son, loyal husband. He gave everything, even his life. I traced the engraved letters with trembling fingers. He gave everything. For me. But I didn't even know who he truly was. A week after the burial, his belongings were brought to me. His suits, watches, old books. And a small leather-bound journal. The first time I opened it, I couldn't breathe. Claire made rosemary chicken again. She always forgets I'm allergic. Sometimes I dream about Sienna. I wonder if she still picks shells off the beach. Mom keeps pressuring me to act normal. But I remember everything. I remember her. Sienna Monroe. If I had found her again, would I have still said yes to Clara? Each entry felt like a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. He had remembered all of it. Those 3 years he claimed were missing? They weren't. He had simply hidden them. From his family, from me, maybe even from himself. He had loved another woman, deeply, desperately, in the quiet years we all assumed were lost. And I was just the woman they married him off to. He never said it aloud. But his journal made it clear. I was his obligation. She was his heart. I clutched the journal to my chest and screamed. Nobody heard. The next morning I stood once more by his grave. A light breeze stirred the leaves. And for the first time in my life, I wished I were dead. "If you loved her," I whispered, kneeling before the stone, "why didn't you just choose her?" I didn't know what I was hoping for. The sign. A voice from beyond? All I got was silence. No, not silence. A voice in my head. My own. "You don't belong in this story anymore." And then, pain. Blinding, white-hot pain in the back of my skull. I had slammed my head against his tombstone. Blood. Dizziness. Blackness. I felt my body tilt backward, and everything disappeared. When I opened my eyes, everything was wrong. Or rather, everything was familiar. Too familiar. The ceiling wasn't my bedroom ceiling. The scent wasn't lilies and embalming fluid. It was citrus, wood polish, fresh linen. And the voice. "Miss Clara," someone called softly. "Mr. Nathan has arrived. The car just dropped him off at the front." I bolted upright. No, this wasn't possible. The last time I heard those words was years ago. The day Nathan returned from the fishing village. The day his family announced his miraculous survival. I scrambled out of bed and ran to the mirror. My face stared back, young. Not tear-stained. Not hollowed from grief. I reached for the frame and gripped it tightly. This was real. I was back. Back to the day my life changed forever. The butler knocked again. "Miss Clara." I swallowed hard. "Yes," I croaked. "I'll come down." My legs felt weak as I walked toward the stairs. Each step down the Hale Estate's marble grand staircase felt like walking a blade's edge. And then I saw him. Nathan. Alive. Whole. Standing at the door in a tailored gray coat. He turned toward the sound of my steps. His gaze met mine. And just like before, he hesitated. For a fleeting moment I saw confusion flicker in his eyes. But then he straightened and gave me a polite, distant smile. "Long time no see," he said. As if we were strangers. As if we hadn't shared a bed. A name. A death. I froze. His eyes. They didn't hold any warmth. But they did hold something else. On his wrist, just barely visible beneath his cuff, was a delicate bracelet made of tiny white shells. In my past life I hadn't noticed it. Now I knew exactly what it meant. Sienna Monroe had made it for him. His journal had said, "She picks shells like their treasure." She made me this bracelet, called it protection from the sea. A blade twisted in my chest. The girl who saved him, he never forgot her. And I never even saw her coming. The moment our eyes met, I knew. Nathan wasn't mine. Not in the past, not in this timeline, not even in the one where he gave his life for me. He offered a faint, polite smile. "Long time no see." I gave a rehearsed smile in return, the kind that said, "I've known you forever," but meant we're strangers now. "You look well," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. He touched the back of his neck. A nervous gesture. "It's been overwhelming. The doctors say it'll take time for everything to come back. There are still pieces missing. Like the 3 years you spent loving someone else," I thought. Out loud I said, "Take all the time you need." I followed him into the house, every footstep echoing louder than the last. The hallway seemed unchanged. Portraits of ancestors in gold frames, fresh-cut lilies in the tall marble vase. I remembered once hoping this would all become my home. Now it felt like walking through someone else's memory. That night I sat in the bath for hours, letting the hot water scald the numbness out of me. I had lived this life once before. Foolishly, blindly, clinging to dreams that were never real. This time would be different. This time I wouldn't fight for a man who had never truly been mine. This time I would leave before it destroyed me. "Clara's sweetheart," Mrs. Hale said the next morning, her voice bright with performative joy. "We're restarting the wedding plans." She was seated at the head of the long table in the conservatory, swatches of lace and gold invitations spread out before her like weapons. Nathan sat beside me, absently flipping through the menu options, his mind clearly elsewhere. Probably with her. "Venues," Mrs. Hale declared. "Let's choose the venue first." I forced a pleasant expression. "I think the rose garden would be perfect." Nathan's head lifted, startled. "Really?" I smiled gently. "It's quiet. Intimate. It suits you." He studied me a moment longer than necessary before nodding. "Then the rose garden it is." In my past life I had chosen a grand cathedral for our wedding. An echoing place that swallowed our silence and made our distance look like grandeur. But this time I chose what he wanted. And this time I would not be there. I had already booked the flight. One way. Zert. Departing the morning of the wedding. The ticket sat hidden in a locked drawer in my room. I hadn't told a soul. Not even my oldest friend Mia, who would have dragged me out of this house herself if she'd known. But I needed to see this through, to understand how far it would go. To prove to myself that I had changed. Nathan, on the other hand, was slipping. I could feel it. Some evenings I'd find him sitting on the back porch, staring off into the rose garden with a look I'd mistaken for reflection. I knew better now. He wasn't seeing roses. He was seeing wildflowers by the ocean. The tangled beauty of a place no one else knew. A place where love had bloomed in secret. That night I walked out to him with a cup of tea. "You've been quiet lately," I said, offering him the mug. He took it, barely noticing when our fingers brushed. "Just thinking about her." He looked at me sharply. I tilted my head. "I'm not angry, Nathan. I don't." "You wear the bracelet she gave you every day," I said softly. "You stare out there like you're seeing someplace else. You talk in your sleep." He fell silent. "I'm not angry," I repeated. "I just want you to be honest, with yourself if not with me." He looked away. "I don't know what I feel anymore." "You loved her," I said. "And now you're being pushed to marry me again." "I'm not being pushed," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I didn't argue. There was nothing more to say. I left him there and returned to my room, shutting the door gently behind me. The suitcase under my bed was half-packed. Soon it would be full. A few days later, Mrs. Hale insisted on taking me to her favorite bridal boutique. "You and Nathan need to find the perfect dress together," she said excitedly. "It'll be symbolic, just like last time." How ironic. I nodded, knowing it didn't matter. Inside the boutique, I went through the motions. Tried on gowns. Posed for photos. Laughed at Mrs. Hale's jokes. Nathan stayed mostly silent, thumbing through his phone when he thought no one was watching. I stepped out in a lace gown that trailed like fog behind me, just as the bell above the door chimed. "Excuse me," a soft voice called out. "I have an appointment at 3. I froze. It was her. Sienna Monroe. She walked in wearing a cream blouse tucked into a pale blue skirt, her dark hair falling over one shoulder in lazy waves. She looked effortless, elegant in the way women do when they know they're loved. When she spotted us, her eyes widened. "Oh," she said brightly. "What a coincidence." I forced myself to smile. "Hello. I'm Sienna. I'm getting married next month." She smiled and turned to Nathan. "I didn't expect to see you here." He stood frozen like a deer caught in headlights. "Sienna." Her eyes flicked to me. "And you must be Clara. Nathan's fiancée?" "That's right." Her smile tightened. What a small world. I wanted to leave. I wanted to turn around, grab my things, and run straight to the airport. But I stayed. Sienna glanced at the dress in my hands. "Beautiful choice. You know, my fiancé always says I look best in lace too." "How lucky for you," I said, my tone mild. She kept talking, mostly to me, but her gaze kept flicking toward Nathan, lingering a little longer each time. "We met at the coast," she said. "He used to come into the cafe where I worked. We'd collect shells together. It was silly but sweet." Nathan shifted. "And your fiancé?" she asked suddenly. I blinked. "What about him? Does he do all those little things? Remember the day you met? Bring you cake from across town just because you mentioned it in passing?" Nathan's hand clenched slightly. I saw it. He saw it. And I knew exactly what she was doing. Sienna looked back at him. "Do you love her?" she asked, almost too casually. He didn't answer right away. I stepped forward, cutting in. "I think we've taken up enough of your time, Sienna. Congratulations on your engagement." She blinked at me, then gave a sharp nod. "Of course. And congrats to you too, Clara." Nathan remained still the entire time. As we stepped outside, he muttered something about needing to take a call and disappeared around the corner. I stood there for a moment, staring at the sky. The sun was bright, but I felt cold. I didn't follow him. Not yet. I already knew where he'd gone. And soon I'd know exactly what I needed to do. That night I opened the drawer beside my bed. Inside was the envelope holding my ticket. Zert. July 3rd. 8:25 a.m. I traced the date with my finger. The wedding was scheduled for July 3rd at 6 p.m. By the time anyone noticed I was gone, I'd already be halfway across the Atlantic. I placed the ticket back and shut the drawer quietly. This wedding would be the last thing I gave him. It would be the closure I never got before. He would get the dress, the venue, the photographs, everything the world expected. But he would not get me. Not this time. Some people say letting go is a choice. But I've come to learn it's more like a quiet unraveling. A slow undoing of every thread that once held your heart together. The night after we visited the bridal boutique, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, unable to sleep. The image of Nathan looking at Sienna, The way his body leaned ever so slightly toward her haunted me like a whisper in the dark. I had once told myself I'd be okay just giving him the wedding he wanted. But now, it wasn't about giving him anything. It was about giving something back to myself. I rose at dawn and stepped outside barefoot. The morning air was sharp, dew-kissed and silent. A thin fog clung to the backyard like it too hadn't yet decided to move forward. I walked until I reached the base of the cherry blossom tree. The same tree Nathan had planted for me on my 16th birthday. He said we'd get married beneath it. He said when the petals fell it would feel like snow in spring, our own private fairy tale. It had grown tall over the years, branches stretching with quiet confidence, unaware that the love it was meant to symbolize had long since withered. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I poured the gasoline. The flames caught fast, licking up the bark with greedy tongues. The fire roared to life, fierce and final, casting my face in its glow. One by one I fed the blaze. The music box. The hand-stitched photo album. The paper cranes he folded for me after my high school exams. The silver necklace I wore when he first kissed me. Finally I held up the ring box. Inside it, the diamond engagement ring glinted coldly, like his gaze when he watched Sienna walk away. I didn't hesitate. I threw it in. The fire popped and hissed. Sparks flew. Metal hissed and cracked. When it was over, all that remained was ash. Ash and silence. I stood amidst the smoke, barefoot and hollow, and for the first time since my return I felt light. Not happy. Not healed. But light, like I had just severed the last thread tying me to a dream that never belonged to me. By noon, the estate was buzzing with wedding prep again. There were new staff, florists, event planners, catering vendors. I kept to myself as much as possible, floating through it all like a ghost. Until I saw her. This time she was holding a clipboard and dressed in a simple white blouse tucked into a black pencil skirt. Her long hair was curled softly at the ends and she wore a name tag, Sienna M. Planning assistant. I was standing on the second floor landing when I spotted her in the main foyer. She was signing an HR form with perfectly poised hands, lips pursed in what looked like feigned professionalism. Nathan passed by her on his way downstairs. He hadn't seen her at first. But when he did he stopped. Only for a second. A pause so brief most wouldn't have noticed. But I did. His shoulders stiffened. His fingers twitched slightly, a tell I'd memorized over years of watching him mask his feelings. "This is our new assistant, Miss Sienna," the HR manager chirped. Sienna looked up. Their eyes met. His fingers trembled. "Welcome," Nathan said, his voice low and hoarse. Then without another word he strode off. I followed him. Quietly. From a distance. He slipped into a small storage room just off the east wing. A few moments later Sienna walked in after him. I hovered by the doorway, pressing myself against the wall. I shouldn't have listened. I knew that. But I did anyway. From inside came the sound of muffled sobs. "Why?" Sienna's voice broke. "Why are you doing this to me? Little Sienna." Nathan's voice was barely audible, thick with something that made my stomach twist. "I'm sorry." There was rustling, shuffling, silence. Then the unmistakable sound of lips meeting, desperate, unrestrained. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I peeked through the tiny crack in the door I saw him holding her. Tight. Her cheeks were flushed, her lips swollen from a kiss they thought no one would see. This was no casual workplace coincidence. This was love that had never been buried deep enough. I stepped back from the door. My hand pressed flat against my chest. Strangely, I didn't cry. I didn't rage or tremble. I just stood there, cold and still like the last ember of a long-dead fire. The next day I noticed something strange. My jade pendant was missing. It had been on my nightstand that morning. A smooth, oval-shaped charm Nathan had given me when I was 16, during the worst fever of my life. He'd climbed 3,000 temple steps to pray for me. Bled through his knees. Blistered his palms. I remembered how he had knelt by my bed, drenched in sweat, whispering, "I asked Buddha to trade my health for yours." And now it was gone. I searched everywhere. Desk drawers. Jewelry boxes. My old coat pockets. Nothing. Later that afternoon Sienna approached me, her expression sheepish. "I'm so sorry, Miss Evans," she said, eyes wide with fake panic. "I may have misplaced a few items while tidying up your room." My body stilled. "Including a jade pendant?" "Yes." "Ah, yes," she stammered. "I think it fell behind the dresser or maybe into a vent. I'll look for it right away, I swear." I stared at her for a long moment. She wasn't clumsy. Not from what I'd seen. She was calculating. Precise. And I'd caught her eyeing that pendant more than once. She had wanted to erase it. Erase me. Nathan overheard the conversation. He stepped over, brows furrowed. "You lost Clara's pendant?" Sienna nodded quickly, eyes glossy with manufactured remorse. Nathan's tone was tight, strained. "You need to be more careful." But I could tell his anger wasn't real. His guilt was. "It's fine," I said softly, cutting in. Nathan looked at me, startled. "What?" "If it's lost, it's lost." I turned to walk away. "Clara," he began. "I'll get you another one," he offered. "A better one." I looked back at him. And in the softest voice I could manage, I said, "There's no need. Some things once lost are meant to stay that way." He opened his mouth to argue but then stopped. Maybe it was my expression. Or the way I stood there, not broken, not bitter, just done. He nodded slowly, his gaze searching mine. But I gave him nothing. No blame. No longing. No sadness. Only silence. And in that silence I knew. This love had died a long time ago. Now I was just burying the ashes. They say memory is fragile. I used to believe that. Now I know it's selective, stubborn even. It doesn't disappear. It just waits, buried in some quiet part of you until the right trigger brings it flooding back. Nathan was starting to remember. Not just me. Not just the life we were building. But her. Sienna Monroe. When Nathan first came back from that fishing village years ago, his doctors had said he was suffering from retrograde amnesia caused by head trauma from the fall. According to them, he couldn't recall who he was or where he came from. That was the version we all believed. And for a while it held. He married me. We lived our quiet life. He never once mentioned Sienna, or that his heart still belonged elsewhere. But then he died. And his journal told the truth. He had remembered her all along. In this lifetime he was back again, and this time under new treatment. His mother, eager to restore every piece of him, had sent him to a specialist in memory recovery, neural stimulation therapy she'd called it. "The clinic in Boston is very promising," she told me one day. "They say with the right sequence he might recall the 3 years he lost entirely." But I didn't need a doctor to tell me what I already knew. The treatment was working. Slowly, steadily, Nathan's mind was stitching itself back together, and piece by piece I was vanishing from it. It started with little things. A long stare at the empty space in the backyard. A pause beside the piano in the library. The occasional glance at me, confused, nostalgic, haunted. Then one day he stood by the back door, staring into the garden with a deep frown. "There was a tree here," he murmured. I froze, my hands tightening on the tea tray. "What?" He looked at me, his brow furrowed. "A cherry blossom tree. I remember planting it. You were wearing that blue dress with the pearl buttons." My breath hitched. That memory was from over a decade ago. He had planted it on my 16th birthday, long before the cliff fall, long before Sienna. He hadn't remembered it before. But he did now. "Where is it?" he asked. "It was removed during renovations," I replied, my voice calm. The roots were cracking the patio. Nathan kept looking at the spot, unmoving. "Let's plant a new one," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "A new tree. Same place. It might help," he said. "Maybe it'll bring everything back." "Bring what back? The parts of him I once had? Or the parts that never belonged to me?" We went to the nursery the next day. He walked between the rows of saplings like a man possessed, touching petals, smelling bark, brushing his fingers over blossoms with an intensity one hadn't seen in years. "This one," he said finally, stopping before a young cherry tree. He smiled, eyes soft. "It reminds me of you." I didn't answer. That evening we stood in the backyard, digging a hole in the soil where the old tree once stood. Nathan's sleeves were rolled, his shirt stained with dirt. He dug with the kind of purpose people reserve for graves or altars. "I remember this," he said, voice low. "It was cold that day. You kept rubbing your hands together while pretending not to be freezing." A small laugh escaped him. I stayed silent, kneeling beside the sapling. "You cried when I finished," he added. "You said no one had ever planted a tree for you before." "I remember," I whispered. He looked at me then, really looked. Do you still want to get married under one? My heart clenched. I used to, I said honestly. Nathan hesitated. Maybe a tree can be replanted. Maybe love can too. I turned away before he could see the truth in my eyes. That kind of love only grows once. And ours was already buried in the ashes I left behind. Just as we finished pressing down the last layer of soil, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen, his brows knitting together. He silenced it. Buzzed again. He hesitated. Pick it up, I said softly. He hesitated once more, then answered. Sienna. I stepped back instinctively, the shovel slipping from my fingers. I couldn't hear her words, but I saw everything in his face. His expression shifted, worry, panic, guilt. I'm coming, he said quickly, ending the call. I'll finish the tree tomorrow, he told me breathlessly, already turning toward the house. I promise. I said nothing. He ran. Just like he did the first time. Just like he always would. The next morning I stood by the window with a cup of tea, staring down at the half-planted tree. It leaned slightly to one side. The earth around it looked loose, unsettled. Like it hadn't quite decided if it wanted to take root. I wondered if love worked the same way. Something needed more than just good intentions to grow again. Nathan had started to remember the music box too. He'd asked me about it a few nights before. Did I ever give you something that played music? He'd said, rubbing his temple like a headache was hiding just beneath the skin. Yes, I told him. A music box. It played Claire de Lune. Do you still have it? I smiled faintly. No. I lost it. He looked crushed. It's okay, I added. It was just a thing. But we both knew that wasn't true. It was the last tangible piece of the boy I had loved. The one who had carved our initials into the old oak swing. The one who once whispered, "Forever, Clara." That boy was long gone. And the man he'd become was no longer mine. I returned to my room and unzipped the carry-on bag. Inside, a one-way ticket to Zurich. Departure, 8:25 a.m. wedding day morning. My passport. A few travel clothes. An old leather-bound notebook I hadn't opened in years. I ran my fingers across the ticket, memorizing the details again. Just in case I needed reminding that I had a choice. This time I would leave before I was erased. This time I would not wait for the betrayal to fully bloom. I would not be the one left behind. I zipped the bag shut. And for the first time in weeks I exhaled without shaking. That evening I watched the sunset through the dining room window. The horizon burned red and orange as the light dipped below the hills. The cherry blossom sapling stood still in the fading light, unfinished, forgotten, much like us. Nathan still hadn't returned. And I didn't ask where he'd gone. I already knew. I sat quietly in the dimming room, my back straight, my hands folded neatly in my lap. And I waited for the moment I would no longer need to wait. 6 years can pass like a blink. Or a lifetime. In my case it was both. 6 years since I left that morning without a word. Since I stood at the gate with nothing but a carry-on bag, a plane ticket, and a silent vow. This time I will live for me. Zurich was only the beginning. In the months that followed, I drifted from continent to continent, capturing temples at dawn, rain-drenched alleys in Tokyo, ancient ruins swallowed by the jungle, sun-soaked street corners in Morocco. My photos began to circulate online. A publisher reached out. Then one book became 4. My face landed on the cover of a photography magazine. My name hit the bestseller list for memoirs twice. I gave interviews. I received awards. I slept under stars in Patagonia and swam beneath the northern lights in Norway. But most importantly, I found peace. And then one day an invitation arrived in my inbox. Claire, we're having a class reunion next month. I know it's been years, but it would mean the world to see you again. Love, Mia. I nearly deleted it. But curiosity has always been my weakness. And part of me still wondered. What became of him? The reunion was held at a private dining hall in an upscale restaurant. I wore a white silk dress, simple yet crisp, and applied minimal makeup. I didn't need much anymore. There was a new light in my eyes now, one I hadn't seen in the mirror since before Nathan. As I stepped through the doors, heads turned. People whispered. Clara Evans? Someone gasped. Is that really her? Mia rushed over, wrapping me in a hug. Oh my God, you look incredible. So do you, I said truthfully. You haven't changed at all. We sat at a table near the center, sipping wine as music played softly in the background. I was quickly surrounded by a small crowd, old classmates eager to ask questions, catch up, show off baby photos, and hear about Africa or Antarctica or what it's like being famous now. I smiled, laughed where appropriate, played the part of the dazzling return. But even as I sat there, something gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. I hadn't asked about Nathan, and no one had mentioned him. Not yet. It wasn't until Mia refilled my glass and leaned in that I got my answer. You know, she murmured, after you left, he lost it. I blinked. Nathan. She nodded. He searched everywhere. Called your family. Checked hospitals. Airports. Even hired a private investigator. But you were already gone. I said nothing, swirling my wine. But the wedding still went ahead, Mia added, voice lowering. Because Sienna showed up. In a white dress. Pregnant. I froze. She announced it in front of the guests, Mia continued. Mrs. Hale fainted. Mr. Hale nearly disowned Nathan. But the company's stocks were already trembling. They couldn't afford a scandal. And Nathan married her? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mia nodded. Yeah. That same day. No ceremony. Just papers. It was a mess. My lips parted slightly, but no words came. She moved into the estate immediately. Nathan started working himself to the bone just to stabilize Hale Group. He barely slept. He drank to get through meetings. Clients noticed. He became robotic. And her? I asked. Mia snorted. Sienna. She turned into a paranoid nightmare. Checked his phone constantly. Accused him of having affairs. Even stormed into boardrooms once during a presentation, claiming the assistant was flirting. I nearly choked on my wine. Seriously. She's unhinged, Clara. Completely. Like something inside her snapped after the wedding. Something inside me twisted. I didn't know what it was. Pity? Vindication? Both. Before I could figure it out, the doors opened. And there he was. Nathan Hale. Time had changed him. His once polished hair now had streaks of gray at the temples. The suit he wore was well cut, but the dark circles under his eyes betrayed the toll of the years. There were lines around his mouth. His gaze, once sharp and unreadable, was now dulled, like a blade worn from misuse. He scanned the room and then saw me. For a moment he froze. And then came the smile. Not the polite one. Not the rehearsed one. But the smallest, most fragile thing I'd ever seen from him. Clara, he said softly, making his way over. It's been a long time. I stood. Nathan, I replied, offering a hand instead of a hug. His fingers brushed mine. Tentative, reverent. You look. He stopped. You look like someone I used to dream about. I gave a small smile. You look tired. He laughed. It was sad. I am. The silence between us wasn't tense. Just honest. I heard you've traveled the world, he said. And you've held one up, I said, nodding toward the Hale logo on his lapel. He grimaced slightly. Barely. I opened my mouth to speak again, but the moment shattered. The doors slammed open. A woman in a black dress, heels clicking, stormed in like a thunderclap. Sienna Monroe. Her hair was curled into chaotic waves, her eyeliner thick enough to look like war paint. But it was her eyes that held the real storm, dark, wild, and locked on me. So it really is you, she said coldly. I knew it. I knew you'd come back to steal my husband. The entire room fell silent. Eyes turned. Wine glasses paused midair. Nathan turned sharply. Sienna, what are you doing? What am I doing? She hissed. What is she doing? What is she doing here with you? Sienna, this is a reunion, he said, voice low. You weren't invited. I don't care, she snapped, stomping forward until she stood right in front of me. She glared. You think acting all high and mighty makes you any less of a husband-stealer? I gently set my glass down and met her gaze, calm and steady. I'm not interested in your husband. You're lying, she shrieked, lunging forward and grabbing my wrist. You've been seducing him since 6 years ago. Don't think I didn't see the looks. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Sienna stood trembling, one hand to her cheek. Nathan's hand hung limply at his side, still shaking. Don't, he said darkly. Don't push me, Sienna. Her mouth dropped open. You hit me? Nathan stepped forward, jaw tight. Let's get a divorce. Gasps rippled through the room. Sienna stumbled back, her eyes wide, face pale. You can't do this to me. I can, he said. And I just did. She looked to me, panicked, desperate. He's yours now, is that it? No, I replied coolly. He never was. That broke her. She crumpled onto the floor, sobbing into her hands, mascara running like ink on water. Mia came to my side. Are you okay? I nodded. Nathan didn't speak again. He just stood there staring at the wreckage he once called a life. And for the first time I didn't feel pain. Only clarity. I had walked away once. I could do it again. This time without looking back. I didn't expect the slap. Not from Nathan. Not in front of all those people. But even more surprising was the silence that followed. There was no apology. No panic. No backpedaling. Just a man hollowed out, exhausted, done. Let's get a divorce, he'd said like it was the only sentence left in his mouth. And then he walked away. Leaving Sienna collapsed on the ground. Leaving the weight of the last 6 years sprawled in mascara-streaked sobs and accusations that no longer carried meaning. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. There was nothing left between us but dust and consequences. Mia found me on the balcony 20 minutes later. I was leaning against the railing, watching the moon flicker against the surface of a garden fountain. She deserved it, she said simply, handing me another glass of red. I took it without a word. She did, Mia continued. You don't have to say it. I'll say it for you. That woman made your life hell. I stared at the reflection in my wine. And his. Mia hesitated. I never told you this, she said carefully, because I didn't know if you'd ever come back, but there's something about that baby. I looked up slowly. Mia's eyes shifted toward the door, making sure no one was near. Then she lowered her voice. Sienna wasn't pregnant with Nathan's child. I blinked. What? She was pregnant, Mia said. That part was true. But the baby, it wasn't his. The world tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the railing. She knew it, Mia whispered. She suspected it even before she made that scene at the wedding. But she couldn't risk losing him, not after everything. So she staged it. He faked the timing. And then, I swallowed hard. She miscarried. Mia shook her head. No, she didn't. I stared. She went to a private clinic. Not a real hospital. Not even a registered one. She made sure it wouldn't leave a paper trail. My mouth went dry. She got an abortion, Mia said flatly. She got rid of the baby before anyone could question who the father was. And Nathan never knew. He had mourned a child that wasn't even his. Had married her because of it. Carried that loss, drank through it, buried it in work and regret. I stood there numb. I thought you should know, Mia said softly. Just in case he ever tells you. I nodded once. But I didn't need Nathan to tell me anything. Because in that moment I knew Sienna had never just lied. She had orchestrated her own empire of deceit. And Nathan had been her willing prisoner. It was 2 days later when the call came. I was checking into a boutique hotel downtown when my phone buzzed. Mrs. Hale. Clara, it's Nathan. He's in the hospital. He collapsed. He coughed up blood. I gripped the phone tighter. Is he stable? They're running tests now, her voice shook. Please. Will you come see him? I closed my eyes for a long moment. Then nodded. All right. Nathan looked like a ghost. He was propped up against white pillows, his skin pale, lips cracked. His arm was hooked to and for. The monitor beside his bed beeped quietly, steady but weak. When he saw me enter, his lips tugged into a tired smile. You're here. I am. I pulled up the chair beside him, my heart oddly steady. What happened? I asked. He let out a bitter laugh. I came home early from a client dinner. Walked into the bedroom. I didn't move. There were voices, he continued. I thought maybe the housekeeper left the TV on. But it wasn't the TV. He looked at me and for once there was no anger in his eyes. Only devastation. She was with someone else. I said nothing. I lost it, he said. We fought. He ran out half-dressed. She screamed at me like I was the one who betrayed her. I still didn't speak. She said things, his voice cracked, about the baby. About how she was never sure it was mine. How she only married me to cover up the shame. She said she did me a favor. He covered his face with one hand. And the worst part, he whispered. I believed her. For years. I thought I failed her. Failed our child. I let her convince me I was the villain in my own life. My throat tightened. I filed for divorce yesterday, he said. Good. He looked up at me. I'm sorry, Clara. I met his eyes. Not for me. For you. His lips parted. You're the one who stayed. Who carried her lies. Who let guilt mold your spine and regret steal your voice. I was afraid, he said. No, I corrected. You were in love. He closed his eyes. And now. You're finally waking up. A sharp click of heels interrupted the silence. The door slammed open. Tina. She was still beautiful. In the way chaos can be beautiful for a moment before it devours everything. Her eyes were wild. Her lipstick smudged. She looked like someone on the verge of collapse. Nathan, she cried. Please, please don't do this. He didn't respond. I know I messed up, she wailed, rushing to his bedside. But I love you. You're all I have left. He didn't move. I was scared, okay? That baby, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose you. He flinched. You were never going to tell me, he said coldly. You were just going to keep lying. I saved your life, she shrieked. In that village, remember? I found you. I fed you. I protected you. Nathan's voice turned glacial. You saved me because you saw my watch. Because you recognized my name from the news. You saw an opportunity. No. You wanted a way out, he spat. Not love. Her eyes widened. She crumbled to the floor beside his bed. I did love you, she sobbed. Maybe not at first. But I did. You're my husband. You're nothing to me now, Nathan said quietly. Sienna stared at him. Then turned to me. You think you've won, don't you? She hissed. Coming back here playing saint. I didn't come back for him, I said calmly. I came back for closure. And then I stood. Nathan looked up. Clara. I should go. He reached for me weakly. Wait. But I shook my head. There's nothing left to say. I walked to the door. Paused. I hope you find peace, Nathan. I really do. I didn't look at Sienna again. I didn't have to. Some people aren't worth the weight of your gaze. And some stories don't need a final chapter. Some just end, quietly like a door clicking shut behind you. 3 days after the hospital, I received a package. It was left at the front desk of the hotel. No note. No return address. Just a brown envelope, tied with thin string, my name written across the front in neat, familiar cursive. Clara Evans. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Inside was a single item. Leather-bound. Slightly worn around the corners. The stitching along the spine frayed from being opened too many times. Nathan's diary. The one he wrote during the years he was missing. The one I was never meant to read but always remembered. The one that changed everything. I stared at it for a long time, just letting the weight of it sit in my lap. I had spent years imagining what it would feel like to hold this again. To turn its pages and find proof that I had meant something to him. Now that it was here, I wasn't sure I wanted to open it at all. So I did. Because I needed to know. Not for closure. Not for anger. Not even for him. For me. The first page was dated 3 months after his disappearance. The handwriting was uneven, like he had only just remembered how to hold a pen. Day 90. The girl brought me soup again today. She says her name is Sienna, but it doesn't feel familiar. Nothing does. But I like the way she smiles when she thinks I'm funny. I don't remember being funny before. I turned the page. Day 101. She helped me shave. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I don't recognize the man I see, but she tells me I'm safe now. That I don't need to remember. Just rest. I try. But my dreams are full of piano music and blue dresses. My hands paused. Blue dresses. There was a blue dress I used to wear in the summers. Satin ribbon straps, mother-of-pearl buttons, just slightly too big for me because Nathan always said he liked it that way. Said it reminded him of air, of sky, of freedom. He couldn't have remembered that. Not if he didn't remember me. And yet, I kept reading. Day 124. Sienna told me I should stop asking questions. That the past doesn't matter. But I woke up this morning with a melody in my head. Played on a loop for hours and I hummed it until I cried. He says I'm making things up. Maybe I am. The entries went on like that. In the beginning, Sienna was light. Comfort. Safety. He described her with soft edges, radiant, selfless, gentle. But as the pages turned, his tone shifted. The entries grew shorter. More fragmented. Day 147. There's a painting in the attic. I don't know how I knew to find it. But I did. It's of a swing. An oak tree. There are initials carved into the wood. C+N. My heart skipped. I asked her about it. She said it was hers. But something in me doesn't believe that. My head hurts again. The next dozen pages were filled with scribbled entries, as if he had written them in a fever. One line stuck out, jagged and underlined. Why does she feel familiar and yet so wrong? Then 2 pages later. I saw her face last night. Not Sienna. The other one. She was standing by a piano smiling. She smelled like jasmine and coffee. Her name. The entry cut off. The ink trailed down the page like his hand had slipped mid-sentence. I stared at it for a long time. The silence in the hotel room grew thicker with every page. The last entry was dated just 1 week before he was found and brought back to the city. Day 203. I'm starting to believe I had another life. There are pieces that don't match what she tells me. Photographs missing. Locked drawers. A box under the bed that she won't let me touch. I think she's lying. I think she's afraid I'll remember the truth. But there's something else. A feeling I can't shake. That I was loved once. That I loved someone back. I closed the diary. No tears. No fury. No heartbreak. Just silence. This wasn't the proof I once craved. It wasn't a confession or an apology or some grand declaration that I had been his all along. It was just the ramblings of a man who didn't know who he was. It wasn't for me. Not really. This diary belonged to the version of Nathan I never met. The one who looked at Sienna and believed her when she said he was safe. It wasn't a love story. It was a maze. And I was tired of being lost inside it. I carried the diary with me the next morning as I walked through the city. The air was warm. Spring was folding over everything in gold and green. People moved slowly under the cherry blossom trees, their petals soft like snow drifting down to earth. I reached the park just behind the Hale estate. The same park where Nathan had once planted that second tree. The sapling had grown taller now, its branches stretching like open arms toward the sky. I sat on the bench beneath it, the diary in my lap. For a moment I just listened. To the wind. To the children playing in the distance. To the quiet thud of closure. Then slowly I stood. And left the diary there. Right on the bench. No note. No explanation. No forwarding address. Someone else would find it. Maybe a stranger. Maybe Sienna. Maybe Nathan himself. But not me. Not anymore. I walked away without looking back. And for the first time in years I didn't carry his words with me. The final book hit the shelves on a quiet Tuesday morning. It had a cream-white cover, embossed with gold lettering. A single photo graced the center. A blurred snapshot of a woman walking through cherry blossoms, her back turned, hair swept up by the wind. The title, The Love I Let Die. Author, Clara Evans. No co-writer. No dedication. Just my name. My story. My ending. It sold out in 48 hours. The reviews poured in, devastatingly honest. Elegantly brutal. A masterpiece in healing. My agent called me that afternoon, her voice crackling with excitement. Clara, it's already hit #1 on the memoir charts. Publishers want a tour. Talk shows are asking. Vogue just emailed. I smiled into the receiver. I'm glad. But inside I didn't feel giddy. Still. Not empty. Not overwhelmed. Just calm. Like a lake that had finally stopped rippling. 2 weeks later an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple. For Clara, one last time. The sender, Nathan Hale. I let it sit unopened for an hour. Maybe more. When I finally clicked it open, it was shorter than I expected. Clara, I've signed the divorce papers. The estate is sold. I'm leaving the country in a month. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere far. There's nothing I want from you. No expectations. Just closure. If you're willing, meet me one last time. Rooftop garden, Hale Museum. Sunday at sunset. Thank you, Nathan. I stared at the screen. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. I didn't make my decision until the very morning of. The Hale Museum hadn't changed much. Its marble columns still gleamed under the sun. The atrium still smelled like old books and polished wood. The elevator chimed the same soft ding as it carried me to the top floor. The rooftop garden was nearly empty. Only one figure stood near the edge, hands tucked into his coat, staring out at the city skyline. He turned at the sound of my footsteps. Nathan. He looked different now. Not just older, freer. Like a man who had stopped dragging his chains behind him. Clara, he said softly. Nathan. We stood in silence for a moment, the wind tugging gently at the hem of my coat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. It was official. I recognized the legal stamps. The divorce is finalized, he said. You're free. I didn't take it. I already was. He nodded, slipping it back into his coat. I wanted to say this in person. I waited. I'm sorry, he said, voice steady. Not just for what I did, but for what I didn't do. For what I let die. I killed the best thing I ever had, not with one blow but 1,000 small cuts. He looked down. You deserved more than my silence. More than my confusion. More than the wreckage I left behind. I took a breath. He looked up again. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I remember everything now. His eyes searched mine. All of it. The piano. The blue dress. The way you used to hum when you cooked. The way I used to watch you from the doorway and think, this is what love feels like. A breeze passed between us. I ruined it, he whispered. And I know I have no right to ask. But I have to anyway. He hesitated. Do you think there's ever a way back? I didn't speak for a long time. Then I smiled. Gently. Finally. Some things aren't meant to come back, I said. They're meant to be buried where they belong. He exhaled. Closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he nodded. I understand. I stepped closer. Not to touch him, just to see him clearly. I loved you once, I said. Completely. Wildly. Stupidly. I know, he replied. And maybe, if we had met again in a different life with no ghosts between us, no diaries, no lies. He cut in quietly, I'd fall in love with you all over again. Maybe, I said. And then I turned. Walked to the elevator. Pressed the button. As the doors opened, I glanced over my shoulder. He was still standing there, alone against the skyline, a man finally stripped of everything but truth. I didn't say goodbye. Some endings don't need punctuation. That night, I watched the city lights flicker from the window of my new apartment. It wasn't grand or high-rise or filled with history. It was mine. The walls were white. The furniture was mismatched. The bookshelves overflowed. There were fresh orchids on the kitchen counter and a suitcase by the door. I was flying to Venice in the morning. Not to escape. Just to explore. I didn't feel haunted anymore. Didn't flinch when someone said his name. Didn't reread old messages. Didn't replay old conversations in the shower, wondering what I could have said differently. I had stopped trying to change the past. Because the past didn't need editing. It needed letting go. I stood by the window, a glass of red wine in my hand, and whispered something into the dark. Thank you, for teaching me what love isn't. And then I raised my glass, not in bitterness, not in mourning. In honor of the woman I had become. The one who chose herself. The one who stopped waiting. The one who walked away. The